I said leave her alone, Isaac Nolan growled, stepping between the woman and the drunk guy cornering her near the back of the dimly lit bar. The man mid-30s, red-faced, swaying laughed like he hadn't heard Isaac clearly. What are you gonna do, huh? You her boyfriend? Isaac didn't answer. He just stood tall, shoulders squared despite the worn denim jacket hanging off his frame. One hand clenched into a fist at his side, the other gently extended behind him, shielding the woman. Walk away, Isaac said again, voice low but firm. The man cursed under his breath, but after a long moment and a glance at Isaac's unmoving stance, he stumbled off toward the exit. Isaac exhaled slowly, not turning around yet. He hated this kind of scene. Hated that people just watched. You okay? He asked finally. I'm fine, came the woman's voice, smooth, steady, surprisingly calm. Thanks to you. He turned then, blinked. She wore a simple black blouse and tailored pants, but something about her posture screamed money. Power. She didn't look scared. She looked intrigued. Isaac cleared his throat. That guy bothering you before I walked up? She nodded. He was persistent. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Isaac nodded once. Glad I was here. Do you work here? She asked. He shook his head. No. Just picking up food for my kid. Her eyes flicked to the takeout bag he was holding, the name of a nearby diner printed on the side. You have a child? Yeah. My daughter. She's 6. He paused. Look, I didn't mean to overstep or anything. Just figured you might need help. I did, she replied quietly. Thank you. Isaac, he said. Isaac Nolan. She extended her hand. Dahlia Foster. He hesitated before shaking it. Her grip was confident, her skin soft and cold from the night air. Nice to meet you. You too. She tilted her head. I appreciate that, but I gotta get home. My daughter's with a sitter. Dahlia smiled, something quietly amused in her expression. Very responsible. He gave a half shrug, already backing toward the exit. Take care, Dahlia. You too, Isaac. She watched him leave, his broad back disappearing into the night. Something about him stuck with her. The way he'd stood between her and danger like it was nothing. No hesitation. No motive. Just kindness. In her world, that was rare. She didn't know what he did for a living. She didn't know he lived paycheck to paycheck. She didn't know he worked construction during the day and washed dishes at night, just to keep the lights on for his daughter. But she would. 2 days later, Isaac was at the playground, pushing his daughter Nadia on the swing when a familiar voice said, "We meet again." He turned, surprised. Dahlia stood there in a navy coat, sunglasses pushed back on her head, holding 2 coffees. Hey, he said, blinking. Didn't expect to see you here. I asked around, she said, handing him a coffee. Hope you like black. Thanks, he said, taking it, still wary but polite. Nadia called out, Daddy. Higher. Be right there, bug, he called back, then looked at Dahlia. You track me down? I was curious. Most men don't step in like that. I wanted to say thank you again. He studied her. You sure you're not here to recruit me for some kind of security job? She laughed. Believe it or not, I'm not that calculating. Aha. And I like playgrounds, she added. They're peaceful. He glanced at her expensive boots, then at the sparkling watch on her wrist. You don't look like someone who has a lot of time for peace. She smiled, but didn't correct him. So, what do you do exactly? He asked. She sipped her coffee. I run a company. What kind? Tech, he raised a brow. Like apps. More like platforms, she said. But yeah, something like that. He nodded, clearly out of his depth but not showing it. That sounds big. It keeps me busy, she said. What about you? Construction. Part-time. Dishwashing at night. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. You raise your daughter alone? Yeah. Her mom left when she was 2. Haven't heard from her since. Dahlia's gaze dropped. That must be hard. It is, he said. But Nadia's everything to me. So I make it work. Nadia yelled again, and he excused himself to give her another push. Dahlia watched him closely, how gentle he was with his daughter, how patient. She admired that. She didn't know many men like him. Over the next week, she kept showing up. Sometimes at the park. Sometimes at the diner, where he picked up extra shifts. She invited him to coffee once, and he said yes. Then again. And again. I don't get it, he told her one afternoon, as they sat outside the coffee shop. Why do you keep talking to me? Because I like you, she said, unapologetically. You're honest. Solid. He shook his head. You. I'm just a guy trying to keep his kid in school clothes. And, she asked, you think money impresses me? Doesn't it? No, she said. Kindness does. Loyalty. Strength. He looked away, a flush creeping up his neck. You're not like anyone I've met. Neither are you. They stared at each other for a long moment. The air between them shifted. Warmer. Tighter. A few days later, Dahlia showed up at his apartment building. She looked completely out of place in the crumbling hallway, but she didn't care. I want to take you and Nadia out, she said. He blinked. Like a date. Like dinner. Somewhere nice. He hesitated. You sure you want to bring a 6-year-old to that? I like kids, she said. And I want to know yours. He stared at her, heart thudding. You're serious? Yes, Isaac. I'm very serious. He studied her, then nodded. Okay. But only if I get to pay for dessert.
She grinned. Deal.
That night, they went to a quiet, upscale restaurant where the waiters wore suits and little white napkins were folded like origami. Nadia was wide-eyed the whole time, and Dahlia ordered her the fanciest macaroni and cheese Isaac had ever seen. He leaned over the table halfway through. You didn't have to do all this. I wanted to. Why? Because you're worth it. He stared at her for a moment. I don't know what this is. It's the beginning, she said softly, eyes never leaving his. He didn't believe in fairy tales. But in that moment he wanted to. The door to Isaac's apartment creaked open, and he stepped inside carrying a grocery bag in each hand. The scent of tomato sauce and garlic still clung to his shirt from his second job. He kicked the door shut with his boot and called out, Nadia? In here, her babysitter answered from the living room, waving from the couch with a children's book in her lap. We just finished a story. Isaac gave her a grateful nod. Thanks for staying late again. No problem, she said, standing to grab her things. She already brushed her teeth and changed. Just need some sleep. He walked her to the door, then turned to the quiet apartment. Nadia had already tucked herself in, a small flashlight illuminating the book she was pretending not to read. You're supposed to be asleep, he said, easing the book from her hands. I was waiting for you, she said through a yawn. Did the ladies say anything about me? He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She said you were the most polite dinner guest she's ever had. Nadia beamed. She's really pretty. Isaac hesitated, then kissed her forehead. Yeah. She is. Once she was asleep, he slipped into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and stared at the nearly empty shelves. He pulled out a half carton of eggs and started cracking them into a pan, his thoughts drifting to Dahlia. The way she'd asked about his work. The way she'd looked at Nadia, like she mattered. He wasn't used to that. The eggs sizzled. He flipped them absent-mindedly, thinking about the restaurant again. And about how Dahlia had reached for the check without blinking, then made a joke about dessert being his turn just to make him feel like he hadn't been out of place. He hadn't felt small around her. That was the strangest part. The next morning, he was walking Nadia to school when a sleek black sedan pulled up beside them. The window rolled down. Need a ride? Dahlia asked, sunglasses perched on her nose. Isaac blinked. You followed us? I asked your neighbor what time you usually leave. I wanted to see you. Nadia tugged his arm. Can we, Daddy? It's cold. He looked down at her, then back at Dahlia. All right. The inside of the car smelled faintly of leather and something floral. Nadia squealed at the seat warmers, and Isaac gave Dahlia a glance. This car probably costs more than my building. You're not wrong, she said, turning the wheels smoothly. But money's just a tool. I don't care about it the way people assume I do. He didn't respond. Something in him didn't know how to. At the school, Dahlia helped Nadia out of the car, crouched to her level, and said, "You'll have to tell me if your teacher gives you homework again. I'll help next time." Nadia nodded seriously. Okay. Back in the car, Isaac rubbed the back of his neck. You didn't have to do that. I know, she said, pulling into traffic. I wanted to. They drove in silence for a few blocks before he asked, "Why are you really here?" She didn't answer right away. I've spent years surrounded by people who only care about what I can do for them. Then I met a man who didn't ask for anything, who just intervened because he saw someone in trouble. He stared at the road ahead. That doesn't mean you owe me anything. I'm not trying to repay you, she said. I'm trying to know you. He shifted in his seat. You don't even know where I'm headed. She glanced over. Then tell me. He hesitated. I'm going to the site. We're working on a high-rise downtown. Can I come? She asked. He blinked. You want to visit a construction site? I've never been to one. He narrowed his eyes. You're wearing heels. She kicked them off and grinned. Problem solved. He couldn't help it. He laughed. At the site, Dahlia stood back as Isaac grabbed his hard hat and checked in with the foreman. She didn't flinch at the noise, the dust, or the smell of sweat and steel. Instead, she watched him how he moved with purpose, how the other workers nodded to him with respect. One of the guys elbowed Isaac. That your girl? Isaac didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. When his lunch break came, he found her sitting on the back of his truck, legs crossed, sipping bottled water like she'd done it 100 times. You're not exactly blending in, he said, handing her half his sandwich. She took it without hesitation. Maybe I don't want to. He leaned against the truck. You're not bored. I run meetings with people who think they're geniuses because they invented another way to deliver groceries. This. She looked around. This feels real. He chewed slowly, watching her. You ever wonder what it'd be like to just walk away from your life? Every day, she said. But I built it. And I have people depending on me. He nodded. He understood that part. You know, she added, you're not what I expected. Neither are you. As the sun moved across the sky, they sat there, side by side, eating in silence. No expectations. No roles to play. Later, when she dropped him home, she didn't reach for his hand or lean in. She just looked at him and said, I'm coming back tomorrow. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He watched her drive away, the back of her car disappearing down the street. Then he looked up at his apartment window, where Nadia's drawing of a rainbow was taped to the glass. He never expected a woman like her to show up in his world. But she had. And she wasn't leaving. Isaac stood on the sidewalk outside the law office, his calloused hands gripping the folder of documents. The receptionist had called earlier, telling him Nadia's school needed updated custody paperwork on file. He'd meant to handle it a month ago, but between 2 jobs and the mounting bills, paperwork always came last. As he stepped out onto the curb, a Navy car eased into view. The passenger window rolled down. Need a lift? Dahlia asked, a quiet edge of amusement in her voice. Isaac exhaled through his nose. Where were you hiding? I didn't see you. I wasn't hiding, she said. I was across the street. I had a meeting nearby. He squinted. You just happened to be parked here? I knew your appointment time. You mentioned it last night. He stared at her. You remember things I barely say out loud. She looked at him then, not as a powerful woman playing savior, but as someone genuinely listening. That's because you don't say much, so when you do, I pay attention. He pulled open the door and slid into the passenger seat. You always this persistent? I'm more interested than persistent, she said, pulling into the flow of traffic. There's a difference. He rested his elbow on the window ledge, watching the city blur by. You ever get tired of people being impressed by you? All the time, she said. Most people are impressed with what I have, not who I am. He turned to her. And who are you? Dahlia hesitated before answering. Someone who used to believe you had to lose pieces of yourself to get ahead. Now I'm trying to find the parts one left behind. He studied her profile, the way her jaw tightened slightly when she said it. You ever think about stopping? Just walking away from all of it? I don't know what I'd do, she admitted. My life is built around fire drills and meetings. Chaos feels like home. Then why are you always showing up where I am? She glanced at him. Because when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm burning. Isaac didn't say anything, but his fingers curled slightly against his leg. He wasn't used to being someone's calm. At his apartment, Nadia was perched at the kitchen table with her crayons, her babysitter folding laundry nearby. She perked up when Dahlia walked in. You came back, Nadia said, standing on her toes to see over her drawing. I told you I would, Dahlia replied, crouching down beside her. What are you making? It's a picture of a rocket ship, Nadia said seriously. It's going to the moon, but it has a garden inside. Why a garden? So the astronaut can have flowers, she said. Even in space. Dahlia smiled slowly. That's brilliant. Isaac leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching the two of them. He cleared his throat. We were going to go to the grocery store. You want to come? Dahlia rose. Sure. The supermarket was nothing special, flickering lights, plastic carts with wobbly wheels, but Dahlia pushed the cart like she'd done it 1,000 times. She didn't flinch when Isaac compared prices or muttered about sale tags. Instead, she handed Nadia a box of cereal and asked her to help pick milk. I could get used to this, she said softly as they walked past the frozen foods. Used to what? Isaac asked. Doing normal things. Without suits. Without cameras. He gave her a sidelong glance. I don't think you've had a normal day in years. Maybe not. But I want one now. They paid in cash. Dahlia pretended not to notice that Isaac handed the cashier a crumpled $5 from his pocket and walked back to the car. The sky had turned a bruised lavender, city lights waking up one by one. You free tomorrow? She asked once they were parked in front of his building. Depends. On what? On if you're asking to help me patch drywall or actually take a break. She tilted her head. What if I said neither? He raised a brow. What are you planning? I want you to come with me to something. It's a benefit gala. Black tie. He blinked. You want me to wear a tux? You'd look good in one. He exhaled through his nose. I don't own a tux. I'll handle that. I don't belong at events like that. She met his gaze. You belong wherever you choose to stand. He looked away. I'm not sure I know how to be that guy. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. He opened the door. I'll think about it. The next day, a box appeared at his door. Inside was a tailored black tux, a crisp white shirt, and shoes that looked like they cost more than his rent. There was no note, but there didn't need to be. That night, he stood in front of the mirror in the hallway, adjusting the collar. Nadia clapped from behind him. You look like a prince. He chuckled. You think so?
Yes.
And she's gonna look at you like you're the only one there. He turned. You think? I know, she said, then added thoughtfully. She likes you even when you're not in fancy clothes. Isaac bent to kiss the top of her head. That's the part one don't get. Outside, a sleek black car waited. He stepped inside, and Dahlia blinked when she saw him. You clean up well, she said, eyes sweeping over him. You look like someone who belongs on a magazine cover, he said, genuinely stunned. Her gown shimmered like moonlight, but her expression was soft, not polished, not cold. Just real. The gala was held in a towering hotel downtown, with golden chandeliers and polished marble floors. Isaac felt eyes on him the moment they walked in, but Dahlia never let go of his hand. People approached her, called her name, complimented her dress, asked about mergers and acquisitions. She answered each one, but never once stepped away from Isaac's side. At one point, a man in a sharp suit stepped up, glass of champagne in hand. "Dahlia, you didn't tell me you were bringing someone." "This is Isaac Nolan," she said. "He's not from this world, but he's the best part of mine." The man blinked, caught off guard, then muttered something and retreated. Isaac leaned toward her. That was a statement. "I'm tired of pretending," she said. "You're here. You're with me. That's the only thing that matters." Later, when the music slowed and couples danced beneath the chandelier light, Dahlia rested her hand lightly on Isaac's shoulder. "I've never danced in a room like this," he murmured. "You're doing fine. I'm not stepping on your dress, am I?"
"No," she said.
"But if you do, I won't mind." He pulled her a little closer. The world around them faded, glass clinking, voices murmuring, cameras flashing. All of it blurred behind the way her fingers curled against his chest, the way her eyes never left his. "You scare me sometimes," he said quietly. "Why?" "Because you make me want more than I thought I deserved." She reached up, brushing her thumb along his jaw. "Then take more." "I'm offering it." He didn't answer. Instead, he kissed her slow, certain, surrounded by people who didn't matter. And for the first time in years, he let himself believe that something beautiful might be meant for him, too. Rain streaked the windows of the dark SUV as it pulled into the underground garage beneath a sleek glass tower. Isaac stepped out first, adjusting the cuffs of his coat before circling around to open the door for Dahlia. She stepped out with a quiet nod of thanks, her heels clicking softly against the polished concrete as they made their way to the private elevator. Inside, Isaac rubbed his palms together, glancing up at the mirror-paneled ceiling. "You sure it's all right bringing someone like me up there?" Dahlia pressed the key card into the panel. "I asked you here because I want you here. That's not going to change when we reach the top floor." The door slid open with a quiet chime, revealing a penthouse that stretched wide and open, walls of glass offering a panoramic view of the storm-lit skyline. Isaac froze just inside, taking in the vaulted ceilings, the polished stone floors, the curated art that seemed too bold to belong in someone's home. "You live here?" he asked finally. "For now. Depends on the quarter," Dahlia said, walking ahead and pulling the pins from her hair. "There's a house in Tuscany, another in Vancouver. But this place feels most like home." Isaac stepped further inside, hands in his pockets. "It's a long way from where I'm standing." She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "You're not standing anywhere beneath me, Isaac. You never were." He didn't respond right away. "I grew up thinking people like you lived on another planet. Now I'm standing in your home, and I still don't know what you see in me." Dahlia crossed the room, stopping in front of him. "I see someone who walks into fire without thinking twice. Someone who doesn't pretend to be anything he's not. And someone who makes me feel like I can stop pretending too." Isaac watched her, his jaw tight. "You ever worry what people would say if they knew?" "I used to," she said. "But I've built a life around other people's expectations. I'm done with it." He gave a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "You say that like it's easy." "It's not," she admitted. "But I've never wanted something simple before. I do now." His voice dropped lower. "And what does simple look like to you?" "Dinner that doesn't come with a press release. A man who tucks his daughter in at night instead of sending a nanny. A life that doesn't need to be posted or praised." Isaac looked away, his throat tightening. I don't know how to be part of your world. Then let me be part of yours, she said. The quiet between them stretched. Outside, lightning cracked across the city, lighting up the windows in flashes. Dahlia moved to a cabinet, pulled out a faded shoebox, and handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, some old, some clearly taken in secret. Her as a teenager in jeans too big for her, standing outside a diner. Her mother, smiling faintly, seated beside a hospital bed. A single envelope lay beneath them all. Isaac looked up, confused. My mother passed 2 years before the company took off, Dahlia said. My father was never around. She worked 3 jobs and still made time to teach me chess on our porch. I kept these to remind myself where I came from. Isaac's voice was low. Why are you showing me this? Because you're the only person I've let pass the surface in years. I wanted you to know I haven't forgotten what it means to fight for something real. He looked down at the photographs again, then carefully closed the lid. You didn't have to prove anything to me. I wasn't trying to, she said. I just wanted you to see me without the titles and the addresses. He met her gaze. I see you. Later, back in the car on the way to his apartment, Dahlia sat quietly, watching the rain race down the windows. She turned to him suddenly. What would you do if you had the means to change everything? Isaac thought for a long moment. I'd buy the building we live in. Fix the leaks, the wiring. Give the tenants a chance to stay without worrying about rent hikes. Dahlia didn't reply. She simply reached over and took his hand. The next morning, Isaac found her already waiting outside his building, leaning against her car with a file folder in her arms. What's that? He asked, stepping onto the sidewalk. She handed it to him. The deed to the building. In your name. He stared at her, stunned. That's not possible. It is, she said. It's paid for. The renovations are scheduled. I just need your signature to make it official. He shook his head, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. You can, Dahlia said, stepping closer. Because this isn't charity. It's investment.
In you.
In your future. In the life you're building for Nadia. Isaac's voice was rough. You don't owe me this. I know, she said. But I love you. And when you love someone, you build with them. He went still. You what? She looked up at him, her eyes clear. I love you, Isaac Nolan.
He didn't speak.
He just reached for her, pulled her into his arms, and held her like the world had finally stopped spinning. Weeks passed. The building transformed. Leaks were fixed. The walls were repainted. Tenants smiled more. Isaac walked through the halls not as a tenant but as an owner, his daughter skipping beside him. One afternoon, Dahlia stood in the courtyard, watching Nadia chase Bubbles with the neighbor's kids. Isaac approached, slipping an arm around her waist. You still good with simple? He asked. She leaned into him. As long as it's with you. I've never had someone believe in me like this. You don't need someone to believe in you, Isaac, she said. But I always will. He looked down at her, brushing a kiss against her temple. Then let's build something that lasts. She smiled. We already are. And just like that, 2 worlds that never should have collided formed a new one, quiet, strong, and entirely their own. Not built on wealth or power, but on the kind of love that asked for nothing and gave everything. The spring air felt like possibility, warm, fragrant, and new. Laughter echoed through the renovated courtyard as children played tag between the flower beds and freshly painted benches. Isaac stood near the building's entrance, watching Nadia help a younger boy tie his shoelaces. She was patient, gentle. He always knew she had her mother's eyes, but the rest, that steadiness, that warmth that was all her own. Dahlia stepped beside him quietly, her charcoal gray blazer fluttering slightly in the breeze. She handed him a paper cup, steam rising from within. Chamomile, she said. You looked like you needed a pause. He took a sip and exhaled. You always bring the right thing at the right time. She tilted her head, studying him. You always know when someone needs protecting, even before they ask. They watched the children for a while, the silence between them easy. Then she turned to him with a different look, one that held a quiet weight. I got an offer yesterday, she said. A buyout. A big one. How big? He asked, without flinching. She gave a small breath of amusement. More than I made in the last 3 years combined. He nodded slowly. And I turned it down. His brow furrowed. Why? She looked directly into him. Because I'm not building things for strangers anymore. I want to build something that has my name and heart in it. Something real. Something that matters. You're talking about more than just business. Yes, she said. I'm talking about roots. About choosing a life that doesn't need to be flown across the ocean to feel important. Isaac set the cup down on the low wall behind him. What does that look like? She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded blueprint, hand-sketched, not digital. She spread it across the stone bench. This is a community center. After-school programs, workshops, job training. A garden on the roof. And a basketball court. All right here, next to the building. He leaned over the drawing, eyes scanning the details. You want to do this? I want us to do this. He looked up at her. Dahlia, this is a huge investment. I know, but it's the kind I believe in. You're serious about staying. I've never been more certain. He let the words settle. Then, softly. Then I want to build this with you. Every beam, every nail. But not just the center. Us. I want to build us. She blinked, just once. Then her hand reached for his, and he held it tightly. Later that evening, with Nadia asleep and the building quiet, they stood in Isaac's apartment, smaller than her penthouse, cozier than any of her houses. Dahlia had kicked off her heels, and her hair had fallen loose from its pins. She was curled on the couch with her knees tucked beneath her, watching him as he laid out a stack of papers on the coffee table. I've been working on something too, he said. She adjusted, curious. What's that? He tapped the top document. I've been meeting with a local nonprofit. They help families transition out of shelters and into stable housing. I want to offer 2 of the units in the building rent-free for at-risk families. Just until they can get back on their feet. Her eyes lit up. You've already planned this? I met with the coordinator last week. I was waiting to tell you until I was sure. She leaned forward, her voice low and sure. You amaze me. He reached for her hand across the table. We do this together. Always. She squeezed his fingers. Always. Weeks passed. The blueprints became foundations. The center broke ground. Every morning, Isaac left the building with a hard hat in one hand and coffee for Dahlia in the other. She met him at the site most days in jeans and boots, clipboard in hand. She was still CEO of her company, but now her calendar left room for the things that mattered. One afternoon, while they reviewed insulation samples and measured window frames, Dahlia paused and simply looked at him. The sun caught the curve of her jaw, her lips parted slightly, as if she were on the edge of saying something. He noticed and set the tape measure down. What is it? I bought a ring, she said, suddenly nervous. I was going to wait. I had this whole idea about a rooftop dinner and candles and all that, but I don't want to wait anymore. Isaac just stared at her. I want to marry you, she said. Not next year. Not when the center is finished. Now. This month. Here. He stepped back, his chest rising. You bought a ring? She nodded slowly. It's simple. Platinum band. I knew you wouldn't want anything flashy. And you want to marry me here? Under the blooming trees in the courtyard, she said. With Nadia carrying the flowers and no press, no speeches. Just us. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. Then yes. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was held 2 weeks later. Dahlia wore a soft ivory dress that fell in gentle folds along the grass. Isaac wore a gray suit with his sleeves rolled slightly, and Nadia walked between them holding both their hands before letting go to toss petals with a grin. The tenants all gathered, some seated, some watching from windows. Music played softly from a borrowed speaker, and when Dahlia said her vows, she didn't talk about futures or fortune. She said, "You taught me what it means to come home to someone, not just somewhere. I will spend the rest of my life choosing you." Isaac's voice shook when he replied, "You didn't just open a door for me. You gave me a whole world I never thought I'd have. I'll protect it, and you every day." They kissed to the sound of cheers and applause. Dahlia laughed when Nadia threw the rest of the flower petals directly at their heads. Later that evening, after the courtyard lights dimmed and the last guests drifted away, Isaac and Dahlia lay on the rooftop, a small blanket beneath them and the stars overhead. "I used to think love was something other people had," Isaac said, tracing a circle on her palm. "And now," she whispered, "now I know it's something we built, brick by brick." She turned to him, her smile soft. "Then let's never stop building." They watched the stars for a long time, hand in hand, the city quiet around them. Below, the center's frame stood tall and unfinished, but full of promise. Just like them. And in that quiet place, where love had grown not from wealth but from shared courage, they began the rest of their life. Together. Always.